Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. If you're dialing in from around Abidjan or somewhere in the GMT plus minus one zones, for everybody else, good day and welcome to this webinar. We're glad you're able to join us. This is a joint APNODE and CLARE AA webinar, and it's part of our contribution to the gLocal Evaluation Week. My name is Kobena Hanson, and I'm the ECD focal person with the Independent Development Evaluation Unit at the African Development Bank. And my co-moderator is Hermine Engel. And Hermine, if you say a few words.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Hermine Engel. I work with the Center for Learning on Evaluation and Results in the Strengthening Legislatures program.
Thanks, Hermine. All right, so I thought we'll do a little bit of housekeeping. So please, if you're just joining us, I would plead that you kindly mute your mic. Thank you. Would want to limit as much background noise as possible. We have two special speakers with us today. I'll be introducing them shortly, but between the two of them, they'll speak for about 40 minutes, and then we'll move into the Q&A. What we plan to do is for you to bear with us such that they finish speaking before we get into the Q&A. Once we're in the Q&A, we will take 3 questions. We'll let the presenters respond. We go back and take another 3, let the presenters respond, and we'll try and take as many questions as possible. When we get to the Q&A, there's going to be 2 ways of doing it. You can either raise your hand and then make a vocal, to contribute by voice, or alternatively, you can type your question into the dialog box, and then this will be read to our speakers. If you have any colleagues that were unable to join us, this webinar will be recorded, and as such, you will be able to share that recording with colleagues. Okay. So as I didn't mention, this is a CLARE AA and APNODE event. What is APNODE? Some of you may know APNODE, others may not. So APNODE really is an acronym that stands for the African Parliamentarians Network on Development Evaluation. APNODE was set up in 2014. It's not that old. It's 5 years old. And it was set up by 25 parliamentarians from 7 countries who are on the fringes of the Africa conference in Yaoundé, Cameroon, who thought it necessary to have such a network. So together with parliamentarians, development partners, and other key stakeholders in the ECD landscape, APNODE seeks to promote the use of evaluation in national decision-making to support development effectiveness and inclusive growth. IDEV is a founding member of APNODE and has hosted the Secretariat since its inception in 2014. Some of the key partners of APNODE, of course, are the African Development Bank. We have AFRIA, the African Evaluation Association. We have RFA, Réseau Francophone d'Évaluation. We have CLARE AA, UNDP, UN Women, the Global Parliamentarians Forum on Evaluation, GPFE, Eval Partners, and others. For more on APNODE, we have a LinkedIn group, and it's right there. You can join. Also, those of you wanting to join, you can write to the Secretariat, and the address is provided at the end of this, where you can join as a member, either as an individual member or as an institutional member. Now, together with APNODE, CLARE AA, as I mentioned already, is a partner. So CLARE AA is the Center for Learning on Evaluation end results. It is based in Wits University in Johannesburg, South Africa, and seeks to build the capacity of people and institutions to plan, measure, and report on projects. CLARE AA's work in supporting and improving monitoring and evaluation contributes to better governance and improved development outcomes across the continent. CLARE works with a host of stakeholders, including policymakers, parliamentarians, academia, MNE networks, as well as MNE practitioners. It is one of 6 regional centers around the globe. Others are in Senegal, Mexico, India, China, and Brazil. And all these centers, of course, are supported by the CLARE Global Initiative, which is based in Washington. And of course, that CLARE initiative is also the ones that this week have been running the gLocal evaluation week, of which we're all gathered here. All right, so our topic today is on implementing the UN's Agenda 2030 and its SDGs. And with the question that what are African parliamentarians doing in this regard? As you all may be aware, or most of you may be aware, when the UN launched the SDGs in 2015, it marked another attempt, to address global inequality, right? The SDGs are a set of 17 goals, very ambitious goals, that seeks to expand not only on the MDGs, but also are focused on specific targets that, amongst others, should show up development. The SDGs itself came out of a very much participatory and bottom-up approach. So it wasn't just dictated by the UN, but it had a lot of country input. Stakeholders at the country level all participated in ensuring that the SDGs were put together. So yes, although the UN is the champion and coordinates the SDGs, its implementation lies at the level of countries. Globally and across Africa, we've seen increasingly that there are efforts to review development plans, visions, strategies, such that they align with the SDGs, and also to set out country priorities carefully. Today, in 2020, we're in June, so already we've done 5.5 years, right? So when programs are reviewed, it's critical to ensuring the achievement of the 17 SDGs. Scrutiny and accountability by an oversight body such as Parliament is critical in this regard. More importantly, the SDGs themselves call for the active involvement of national parliaments. If we take, for example, the UN General Assembly's resolution 70/1, it specifically calls on parliaments to be involved by encouraging countries to conduct regular and inclusive country-led reviews of the progress at national and sub-national levels. SDG 16, which focuses on peace, justice, and strong institutions, specifically refers to the role of parliaments through its target 16.6, which is develop effective, accountable, and transparent institutions at all levels, and target 16.7 that says ensure responsive, inclusive, participatory, and representative decision-making at all levels. So parliaments are critical. Even more important, we do know that parliaments, by virtue of them being an oversight body on the executive, by them having a lot of oversight and control over budgets, are important because then they can ensure that funding is allocated to national priorities. They can hold the executive accountable and also be responsible to their constituents. Members of parliament themselves are key, not only in identifying national priorities, but in providing guidelines or guidance on their implementation such that such action reflects and addresses national needs and circumstances. MPs, again, play a role, as I did mention here, via the budget process to ensure that adequate resources are allotted to national priorities, and they play an even more important role from the oversight standpoint. So we believe that MPs and parliaments should definitely hold governments accountable, not of the commitments they've made as far as the SDGs are concerned, and support the establishment of national coordinating teams who will be tasked with implementing and reviewing progress toward the SDGs. MPs and parliaments also support VNRs, the voluntary national reviews, which are steps that countries take to ensure that they're moving toward achieving the targets. So we are pleased today to have two special guests, Honorable Evelyn Mpagi-Kaabule from Uganda and Honorable Stanley Kakubo from Zambia. They have graciously agreed to join us today to discuss this topic. I'll introduce them in a second. But first and foremost, I must say that we're pleased that they've taken time off their busy schedules to join us. So let me start, as they say, with ladies first. So with Honorable Evelyn Mpagi-Kaabule. Honorable Kaabule is a founding member of APNODE and is also the current chairperson. She's a former member of parliament from Uganda, having served as the first women's representative for the Luka district in Uganda's 9th parliament. Honorable Evelyn, welcome. And if you want to say a few words, you can do so before I go to Honorable Kakubo. Go ahead, Honorable Evelyn. Thank you so much,
Kobena. I welcome everybody on this interesting webinar, and I look forward to have a great time as we discuss the implementation of SDGs in our respective areas. So most welcome, everybody. Let's shoot.
Thank you, Evelyn. Next is Honorable Stanley Kakubo. He's a Zambian politician and an accountant by profession. He's currently member of the National Assembly of Zambia for the Kapiri Mposhi area in the central part of Zambia. He's a member of the Budget Committee, and it shouldn't surprise you, given his background as an accountant. And he's the interim chairman of the Zambian APNODE National Chapter. He's also a big champion and supporter of human rights. And Honorable Kakubo, we're pleased to have you. All right, so what we're going to do at this point is we're going to walk our distinguished speakers through a series of questions. We're hoping that in the interim, technology is always interesting, but you know, that they will help Honorable Stanley Kakubo fix his mic. And we'll then walk through a series of questions. Once we're done with the questions, we'll, as I said earlier, we'll open it up for the Q&A. We have a number of people who are signed on. I think currently we're almost at 44 people signed on. So we'll plead that when we get to question Q&A, you're very specific, and then you go straight to your question, and we do that. Honorable Kakubo, can you try again?
Okay.
Yes,
can you hear me now?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Good afternoon from all of us in Lusaka, here at Parliament Buildings. And thank you so much, Kobena, for your kind words in your introduction.
Thank you, sir. All right.
Yeah, you're very generous.
Thank you. We're going to move into the Q&A, and my co-moderator, Hermine, is going to take us through the questions. So Hermine.
Thanks, Kobena. And thank you, Honorable Kakubo and Honorable Evelyn, for making the time to share your perspectives and experience with all of us, and we look forward to the questions from the broader participants as well. I'm going to move right in, and the first question that we have is, how is your parliament, and in this case the parliaments of Uganda and the parliaments of Zambia, working towards the achievement of the UN SDGs? Then what specific mechanisms in terms of structures or partnerships or explicit actions have been put in place to facilitate this? And especially now in light of COVID-19 and its impact, whether you've had to reinvent the wheel in some ways. Thank you. Can we ask Honorable Evelyn to start us off? Thank you, Honorable.
Thank you so much, Hermine. Once again, I'm happy to be here, and I hope everybody is able to hear me loud and clear.
Honorable Evelyn, it is a bit faint. Yeah, perhaps you want to switch the video off, and then we'll could hear better.
Switch off the video. All right. Is that better?
Much better, thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Once again, greetings from Uganda, and I hope everybody is safe. I thank the organizers for this wonderful webinar, and I know we are going to share a lot. Straight to the question of how our parliament is working towards achievement of the UN SDGs, and also talking about the specific structure in place to facilitate this in light of COVID. I'll talk about the earlier actions we've taken, because as you are all aware, COVID has just come in, and I'll relate what we had done before to the current situation, which is now a COVID situation. As you're all aware, that parliamentarians have an opportunity and constitutional responsibility to play, and they play a significant role in supporting and monitoring SDG implementation. Uganda, I'm happy, is one of the first countries that were said to localize.
Honorable Evelyn, we are
losing you also set up targets. We've set up national development programs, and now have I lost you, or you've lost me?
We have you back now. Thank you.
Okay, I don't know where I stopped, but I'll try to be brief on what I had said. I was saying parliamentarians, we have an opportunity and a constitutional responsibility to play a significant role in supporting and monitoring SDG implementation. And in Uganda specifically, we are happy to mention that our country was one of the first ones to localize or domesticate the SDGs, and also to set targets that are linked to the 169 targets. So specifically as Parliament, we're aware that Agenda 2030 declaration acknowledges the essential role of national parliaments through our enactment of legislation and ensuring that in ensuring accountability for the effective implementation of our commitments. So as members of parliament, we act as an interface between the people we represent and the state institutions. We promote and adopt people-centered policies and legislations to ensure that no one is left behind. Because since we're people's representatives and we're the lawmakers, we ensure that the legislations or the policies we make should not leave anybody behind, including the people down in the villages that represent. So that is one of the roles that we must ensure that all the SDGs are incorporated within the laws we make, or
Evelyn,
touch on the respective SDGs. And as a parliament, yes, have I lost you again?
No, you're fine. Perhaps just if you could just keep as still as possible and speak close to the mic, because sometimes we lose you.
Okay, I am very close to my PC. I don't know why I'm getting off, but maybe network, but I'm very close.
Much better now.
Am I
much
clear
better
now? All right.
Yes.
As a Parliament of Uganda, we have an integral approach. We have partnerships. We have participations through inclusive political processes and responsive and effective
Honorable Evelyn, I'm afraid we can't hear you again.
We try as much as possible to text you again. Hello.
Yes, this is much better.
It must be a problem with my network. It keeps on and off because it's showing me here when the network is off. I hope I'm able to be heard now. Hermine, am I clear?
Yes, just try and stay as still as possible and close to the mic.
I'm very close to the mic. Actually, I'm putting my mouth almost to the mic, but it's a network problem. So I was saying that as a representative of the people, as representatives of the people, we try as much as possible to have an integrated approach. And we have partnerships and participation through inclusive political processes and responsive, effective, accountable institutions. So we have, in Uganda, we have representatives from every county. So cutting across all counties in the country, we ensure that the member of parliament represents people from every county. We have affirmative action where we have women representatives from all districts, and we have special interest groups from youth. We have PWDs, we have multi-parties. So all these now are set up to ensure that the representation goes down to the people as we carry out our work in representing the people. Then we have global and regional exchanges of experiences and countries to identify solutions for planning, for budgeting, for implementing and monitoring progress towards achieving the SDGs, and also tracking where and how funds are spent to curb corruption and assess the impact we represent. So what? Yes.
Yes, we lost you there for a minute again. I'm going to ask that we try to assist you for a minute, and we ask Honorable Kakubo to respond to the question in the meantime, and then I will try and summarize what you have already said, and Kobena will be in touch with you privately.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, good. So Honorable Kakubo, we'd like to ask you to respond to the same question in terms of the achievements of the Parliament of Zambia in working towards the SDGs and the specific mechanisms you have undertaken, especially in light of COVID. Thank you. So I'm going to, while they are dealing with the technical problems, I'm going to try and just summarize what Honorable Evelyn has said so far. And I think the key points highlighted were especially around the constitutional responsibility of the Parliament of Uganda, and the fact that Uganda was one of the first parliaments to localize the SDGs and to set relevant targets. And Honorable Evelyn further emphasized the importance of paying attention to partnerships and how this is quite a crucial element in the role of Parliament as well. And especially at the devolved level in terms of the counties as well. So these were some of the important issues that Honourable Evelyn has highlighted, especially in terms of Parliament's role in tracking the implementation of the SDGs. So I'm going to try and see if Honourable Kakubo is back with us. Okay, and Honourable Evelyn.
I am available.
Good. Honourable Evelyn, I can hear you, but it is a bit unclear, so if you can just keep still. But I'd like you to just conclude on the first point.
Okay, I am concluding and saying that as the Parliament of Uganda, what we have done is we have committees with which we work. We have session and accountability committees in terms of structures. We have forums, and specifically we have a forum on SDGs. We have networks with development partners, specifically UNDP, UNICEF, Clear AA, UN Women, and so many others. And the way we present is that we have matters of national importance where members of Parliament get to the floor and ask the executive on all matters of national importance, and they also ask the implementation is concerned. And we have also a committee, a presidential advisory committee on budget, where members of Parliament sit and ensure that the budgeting system includes all the SDGs. We also work with the centralized system where, in summary, we handle implementation in terms of legislation, in terms of budgeting, where we pass budgets that are compliant to the SDG.
Thank you, Honourable Evelyn. We managed to hear some of your points, but unfortunately we lost quite a bit. But I think it's important just to highlight that you mentioned that you have a specific forum on the SDGs and that the budget system also tracks the SDGs specifically. So thank you very much for that input. Perhaps in the question and answer session, you can expand where necessary. Thank you. And I think Honourable Kakubo is back with us, if I'm correct.
Right.
Honourable Kakubo?
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you. Would you like to share with us what the Parliament of Zambia is doing in terms of achieving the SDGs?
Okay, I'm happy you can hear me now. We had some challenges here. Is it clear? Perfect. Okay, you see, as parliamentarians here, we rely on the structure of our oversight functions here. Basically, as a Parliament of Zambia, we have 14 portfolio committees that we use to scrutinize the activities of the executive vis-a-vis the SDGs. We look at all sectors, economic sectors, the budget process, as well as also functions of the health, functions regarding health in the rural areas and also in the modern areas of our country. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, yeah. Okay, good. So I was saying that as members of Parliament here in Zambia, we rely on the structure of our Parliament. Mainly, we provide oversight on the executive, and we have portfolio committees, 14 of them, and also 4 general committees that also we use to provide oversight. With regards to the main house in the chamber, we have opportunities even to ask directly the functions of the Vice President as a leader of government business here, and we are able to interact with ministers almost on a daily basis. Ministers come to our Parliament and they provide statements with regards to SDGs and how the executive is implementing them. And on a daily basis, when the House is sitting, as Parliament here, we are able to interact with the executive, and the Speaker facilitates that. And we receive some partnerships that have provided training to not only MPs, but our staff as well. For example, SDG 4, we rely on our partnership with the Austrian Parliament. We have good friendships there, and they support us, especially on education for children and equitable distribution of good education across the country. And also, with regards to participation, enhancing participation of our citizens in the governance process, our Parliament here, we have gone as far as putting parliamentary houses closer to the people in the constituencies. Each parliamentarian has an office in the constituency where citizens can come and bring their issues, and then as parliamentarians, we pick them up and bring them to the House. Yeah.
Thank you,
yeah.
Honorable Kakubo. Thanks so much. I think it's important, we appreciate the importance that you attach to bringing Parliament closer to the people, and also the various partnerships you have, especially around capacity strengthening of both members of Parliament and staff around monitoring the SDGs. So thank you very much for that input. I'd like you to move directly to the main challenges that your Parliament is facing, and what you are doing to mitigate those challenges. We'll start with you, Honorable Kakubo, and then we will move to Honorable Evelyn. Thank you.
I think some of our recent challenges have been with regards to COVID. Our Parliament here had to close at an unplanned time, a week early. And some of the interventions that we've put in place so that our move towards SDGs are not completely affected is that we had to as budget committee here, we had to receive a supplementary document with regards to the budget, the way it is flowing, and the way the economy has been struggling here. So we've had to approve a supplementary budget. We've also had to, as Parliament, we've had to approve the funds that we are receiving from entities like the UN, and also from the World Bank, the African Development Bank, and that's what we are using to keep pushing amidst COVID.
Thank you so much. I think that's important in terms of making the necessary budget provisions and approving, making sure that those approvals go through. So thanks very much for sharing that with us. Honorable Evelyn, are there any specific challenges that you would like to share with us in terms of the Parliament of Uganda? Okay, I'm not sure whether we still have Honorable Evelyn with us, but I would suggest that we move to the next question. Kobena, if you can move, and then we will ask Honorable Kakubo to proceed. Thank you. So, Honorable Kakubo, we'd like to know how progress on the SDGs are being measured, and how the Parliament of Zambia is specifically involved in measuring the progress towards the SDGs.
I think one of the key things that we do here as parliamentarians is that as a Parliament, on a quarterly basis, we submit reports that we use for tracking. So we are constantly tracking, and on a quarterly basis, we make our own submissions to the executives on our feelings on how they are progressing. But you notice that the global economy is not doing so well lately. So it appears to us that the ambitions of the SDGs are quite now very high compared to, for instance, the growth of economies across the world, and it's becoming more and more difficult to achieve that. So we are constantly tracking them, and especially with activities that are aligned to Parliament under the Ministry of National Development and Planning. We have an evaluation and monitoring team at the ministry, which is in constant touch with our Parliament here, and that's what we use to track. And like I had mentioned earlier, using our portfolio committees, it's easier to have specific interface with the executive. Let's say, for instance, with issues to do with health, we have a specific committee that is tasked to look at that progress and measure it and report to the main house and consequently to the executive. Also, when it comes to issues to do with the budget, we have to track how the budget is doing. The first 2 quarters of the year, the budget committee sits to see how the progress from the time that the budget is approved at around Christmas or so. So the first quarter, the budget committee checks the progress that is being made by the executive. The second quarter we check. And as Parliament, we are pushing that the quarterly checks run through the 4 quarters of the year. At the moment, we are restricted to only 2. And we are thinking that we are making some steady progress for us to monitor even more throughout the year.
Thank you so much. We have a question coming in that I'm hoping that you can relate to that response as well, in terms of working towards the achievements, but also the challenges. The question is around how Parliament works with research departments within Parliament to get feedback from the M&E roles, especially the special committees in all countries on the panel. So Honourable Kakubo, can we ask you to comment on the relationship with the research department specifically?
Yeah, I think generally as parliamentarians, we've had very, very good support from our research departments. And they are very dedicated. And even for us as the Zambian chapter on APNODE, the Zambian Parliament has provided a committed secretariat specifically to deal with issues of evaluation and monitoring. So our research department has been very supportive, whether it's to parliamentarians who want to move private members' motions on checking on the progress of the functions of the executive. The research department is spot on. And I think even just the qualifications of being a researcher at our department, the stakes are raised very high, very highly qualified, and are constantly being trained.
Okay. Thank you, and I'm glad that you also highlighted Parliament's engagement with the M&E team at the Ministry in terms of supporting the tracking of progress towards the SDGs. So thanks very much for that. And I would like to, I'm going to try one last time to check if Honourable Evelyn is with us still. No, we don't have her. So I'm going to ask Kobena to take over at this point and proceed with the questions. And I'd like to encourage our participants to please also, if you have a question that is a follow-up, we will certainly take note of it and insert them into the speaker's responses. Thank you.
All right, so Honorable Kakubo, thank you very much. I've been listening eagerly to what you're saying and what's happening in Zambia. We applaud the wonderful work being done. I just wanted to find out a little bit more about voluntary national reviews. If Zambia has already undertaken any, if so, what were the outcomes of the review, and what roles, specific roles, did Parliament play in this regard? And if not, and one is, let's say, planned, what is Parliament doing to ensure that this is done successfully?
Okay, I can confirm that we, as a country, have participated in the VNR, except that I'm not too pleased to inform you that as Parliament, we were not really active in the process. But to mitigate that, what we've done is that we've had meetings with the UNDP as APNODE to try and see how we can infuse into the report before it is released as soon as possible. And what we tentatively, we've agreed that Parliament is going to be allowed to be given a window in which we can make our presentation. But all in all, the UN has been giving a lot of support to the Zambian government, especially the Ministry of National Development and Planning. Most of the report was prepared by the executive with very little input from us as parliamentarians. But there's still a window. We are hoping that once things are normalized under COVID, that window that has been given to us, we shall take advantage of it and put in some feedback. But yes, as a country, we've been heavily involved in VNR.
Thank you. I'm really, one of the participants want to know to what extent Parliament basically forming special committees on M&E, right? And in terms of and then also the Public Accounts Committee, right, into the audits. If you can shed a little bit light of this in the Zambian context. Okay.
Our Public Accounts Committee is one of the most vigorous in the region. It's not easy to appear before our Public Accounts Committee. But in terms of Parliament promoting M&E caucuses, I think we've done very well. We have one specifically to women who are tracking how education for young girls is going. And with the inclusion of APNODE, it gives us, I think, a platform where members of parliament are quickly joining APNODE. One of the challenges we are facing so far is that these caucuses are voluntary. So that we don't have strong mandate to really perform. And one of the discussions I've been having even with our staff here is that perhaps in due course, the APNODE caucus that we have here, we are hoping that somehow in due course it can be made into a committee because of the importance that we have attached as parliament to M&E. But as long as we remain a caucus that is voluntary, we will always have challenges in trying to achieve and implement the aspirations of M&E.
Thank you. I see that next door to Zambia, Honorable Senator Chikukwa from Zimbabwe has a question, and he basically would want to know how is Parliament ensuring the executive is allocating enough resources towards the realization of the SDGs?
Okay. The way we've set up our budgeting process is that we have a specific sitting as a Parliament of Zambia that only deals with the main business of budgeting. And we go through pretty much every sector in the economy, whether it's construction, whether it's the economy performance of the economy itself, whether it is health and education. And we try to align our budget as much as possible to the SDGs. And in addition to that, one of the things that we focus on as a parliament is to ensure that the laws that we enact do not depart from the aspirations of the SDGs. And then after that, we go into the following year where the whole budget again is constantly scrutinized by questions from members of parliament. Once approval is done, and then we also follow up on how funds are being released. But still we face some challenges. We are not yet at a level where we can confidently say that everything is going well. There's still room for our parliament to improve, especially with the release of funds towards activities to do with SDGs.
Thank you. Before we move on to how you are shaping APNODE in Zambia, I see there are two other questions that are related. So I'll let you speak to them before we move on to talk a bit about APNODE. So the first question is from Jarius, and it says, to what extent has the M&E departments been involved in tracking the progress of SDGs in Zambia and in Uganda? Hopefully, Honorable Evelyn will be back to share that. And secondly, the second question is from Jonathan Senkala. He says, Honorable from Zambia, knowing the SDGs have been running for some years now, and COVID has just come up, is there any challenges you have faced with regard, or any challenges you faced with regard to the SDGs before COVID? So the first is with the department, so maybe to build a bit on what you had said earlier about M&E departments, and the second is challenges that you face prior to the onset of COVID.
Okay, I think the structure of our governance system here is such that our M&E department here at Parliament is fairly new, but it's been fully set up, and we have staff that are fully committed. However, under the Ministry of National Development and Planning and other ministries in the government of Zambia, we have M&E departments that have been active all along. But here at Parliament, I think the setup is still new and it's still being established, and it's I think it's progressing well, especially with the support of the Speaker now. With regards to the challenges that we had before COVID, yes, we had some challenges because the Zambian economy has not been growing as strongly as it used to before. When you look at, say, maybe 8 years ago, our GDP growth was around 7 to 8%. But now we've been shrinking in the last 7 years or so to about 2% per annum. So it's been very, very difficult for us to achieve our SDGs. We are moving, but at a very slow pace. We wish would have been faster. Post-COVID, one of the challenges we are facing now is that business activities in the country are heavily constricted, especially in the sectors that we rely on as a country, such as tourism. Nobody is traveling now, so we have no tourists, especially in the southern province where we have a lot of tourist attractions, such as the Victoria Falls. Nobody's coming. Even local tourism has been constricted because of the partial lockdown that we have had. So you find that because business has been slow generally in all sectors, trading has been slow, some of the retail shops have been closed, restaurants and so on. You find that the capacity of our government to generate funds and to enable its spend on SDG activities has been extremely low. So we will need now new strategies to see how we can recover from that. But I think we are grateful to the country's partners, especially the EU, that have been releasing funds to ensure that the Zambian government can continue to operate with regard to some of the SDGs that we need to achieve. So we've had some support, but not from our local economy, but from foreign partners.
Thank you, sir. I know Evelyn is having challenges, but she's still online and she typed in a response. So I'll let Hermine go ahead and then read Evelyn's response, and then I come back to you, Honorable Kakubo, just to give you some breathing space. We don't want to keep you talking every time. So Hermine, your mic, please.
Apologies. Yes, the question is in response to the participant called Asimwe, and it's about the differences between supervision and monitoring. And Honorable Evelyn says, yes, we do understand the difference between supervision and monitoring, because parliamentarians are not supervisors, but we do monitoring through the oversight role, where we use baseline documents from the various government ministries, departments, and agencies. Thanks, Kobena.
There's a question, Honorable Kakubo, that comes in from the Pan-African Parliament, and it says, how did the citizens of Zambia contribute to determining the priority programs of the country toward the achievement of the SDGs? So were the citizens involved, and how was this involvement done?
I think the needs of our citizens, for us as Parliament, we capture them during our sittings at committee level. Because usually what we do is that we invite witnesses who include experts as well as members of the public to make their submissions, whether it's at budget formulation or where there's a new law coming. There's always involvement from the general public as well as experts. So at any given point, the Parliament of Zambia endeavors and tries very hard to involve citizens. And you recall from my earlier submission, I'd mentioned that the structure of our Parliament is such that we have constituency officers in each one of our constituencies. So that gives a platform for citizens to engage us, their representatives, so that we carry their views and implement them at policy formation. And it also bridges the gap between the citizens and the executive through us as parliamentarians, because we bring submissions directly to them, and it ensures that some of the public input in SDGs is also absorbed in the process.
Thank you very much. I think this has been very educational. I know as you spoke, you did mention about APNODE Zambia, and in your introduction, I did mention you the interim chair of APNODE Zambia. So I thought I would ask this question, that if APNODE basically is about enhancing the demand for and utilization of better evidence for oversight that leads to transformative development. As we know, transformative development is at the heart of the SDGs. It's at the heart of AUC's Agenda 2063 and many other national development strategies. So as a continental network, and you, given your strategic position as the interim chairperson of APNODE Zambia, how do you see the network assisting countries, yours Zambia included, in this drive to ensure that the SDGs are achieved and also ensure that transformative development becomes a reality?
Okay, our view is that Africa needs APNODE and APNODE needs Africa. Specifically to us as parliamentarians, you know, we come from different backgrounds with different educational experiences and backgrounds. But APNODE provides a platform where we, as members of parliament, who may not be experts in M&E, to be trained in order for us to extract the evidence that we need in our oversight functions. But APNODE also is going to be very helpful for us in Zambia, because the training is not only for the technical skills, are not only for parliamentarians. but I think we take keen interest because we are training our staff as well, our support staff, to help us grow the skills that we need. So APNODE coming to Zambia for us is a timely intervention. Like I've mentioned, we are not experts in M&E, but we are required to perform oversight functions on the executive. So the skills and the training that and the support that we'll get as a Parliament of Zambia is very timely at this stage, especially where we have challenges in the setup of our economy. For instance, the general public will ask to say that the focus of the executive is issues to do with construction of schools and roads and so on and so forth. Then we have youths on the other side questioning the non-availability of jobs in the country. What has happened? Is the government's push going the correct direction to ensure that jobs are created? But we as members of parliament, we require the skills to answer these questions and to check exactly which direction that the executive is trying to push the country, whether it's through infrastructure development. Why don't we get the jobs from there? But without the requisite training, without the requisite skills, without the requisite capacity to extract the numbers on our own as MPs to see is what the citizens are concerned with actually consistent with what the numbers are saying. But the availability of APNODE gives us a chance to really get the skills that we need. And since our setup around October, September last year, as interim chairman, I think we are pleased with the progress that we have. And I'm happy to report that the parliamentarians here at the Parliament of Zambia have shown keen interest already. Had it not been for a sudden closure due to COVID, our numbers in terms of joining the caucus would have been much higher. But at the time when we were closing, I think we had our secretariat here, which Mr. Speaker approved, already had a lot of members that had joined. And I also had to explain to a lot of members that as soon as Parliament opens next week, we'll be ready to receive much more members. The interest has been very, very exceptional. I think we are one of the fastest growing caucuses here at Parliament. Members have been calling me directly. They've been engaging our secretariats, which Mr. Speaker approved. And we hope that we can enhance this through the support of institutions like CLEAR and so on. Either APNODE has been very, very welcome here.
Thank you, sir. I saw there was a question from Asimwe, Mr. Asimwe related, and I've seen Honorable Evelyn has responded. I'll read out the question, read out Honorable Evelyn's response, and then come back to you in case you also want to chip in. So the question here says, is it possible for APNODE and members of parliament to also mobilize citizens towards the M&E, monitoring evaluation of the SDGs? So Honorable Evelyn's response is that the future plans of APNODE include, but are not only limited to incorporating African parliaments to form chapters, so all members of parliament appreciate evaluation and the use of evaluation evidence in decision-making and policy-making. APNODE and members of parliament can mobilize citizens toward M&E of SDGs, especially by sensitizing them about what SDGs are, and also the use of various structures we have, and also the use of various structures we have in M&E. In Uganda, we have a tool called Bazara, right? Where citizens are called for discussion on service delivery, and during this platform, MPs are given the time to talk to citizens about the SDGs. So that is what is happening in Uganda, the Bazara system. Thank you, Honorable Evelyn, for chipping in. We're sorry, technical difficulties can make you be talking, but we appreciate you still being there. Yes, Honorable Stanley, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yes, I'd like to add to that. The Zambian scenario here is such that I think our colleagues in Uganda are doing a little bit better than us. Our structures still leave a lot to be desired in terms of M&E, and I think there's a lot that needs to be done. We are not yet at the level where our colleagues are, but suffice to mention that the nation now is aware that in order for us to progress, we must be able to monitor our progress. We must be able to monitor our numbers. We must be able to question some of the actions that the executive are making in as far as developing our country is concerned. I'm not convinced that our structures are in place yet in as far as M&E are concerned. So we need to build on those and strengthen them.
I know that because we dropped Honorable Evelyn, we sort of like shifted from our format where we would let you speak and then we go to the Q&A. And I see more questions coming in. So what I'll do at this point is I'll post the last question we had to Honorable Stanley, and then we go and address all the insightful comments that are coming in. But before I do that, I see that there was a question that came in from Dr. Vincent Kanyamuna, and it's both to yourself, Honorable Kakubo, and to Honorable Evelyn, and she's responded in writing, and I'll let you also respond. So from Dr. Kanyamuna, pardon me, he says, do both Zambia and Uganda have M&E functional structures under the presidency? If yes, how do these structures interface with the parliamentary M&E departments in the context of the UN SDGs? Yes, and then I'll quickly read Evelyn's response, then I'll let Honorable Kakubo respond. So Honorable Evelyn says, yes, in Uganda we have M&E structures under the presidency, where we have the Presidential Advisory Committee on Budget. A monitoring unit is headed by a state minister. Related to that, from Karen, Karen from AfDB says, you can read more about Uganda's Bazaras and the latest edition of IDEV's magazine, Evaluation Matters, on Made in Africa Evaluation. There's a link there, and colleagues who are interested, please, you can just write to us. You can either access the link or you can write to us and we'll send the link to you. Thank you, Karen. Honorable Stanley, if you could also speak to that, the situation in Zambia.
Yes, the situation in Zambia is that the president also gets a quarterly report from across the entire governance structure where M&E is found in the different ministries. So the president gets a quarterly report, but also Parliament remains an integral part of this process, as we also send our reports through the cluster advisory groups which are housed under the auspices of the Ministry of Justice here. So Parliament presents its own report, and also the president gets his report through the network, through the governance system of our country from different ministries.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll go to the last question, and then we'll now go to our Q&A, which we've sort of like started already. But we're saying that here, we're already in 2020. So technically, we have a decade to go. If we want to be specific, we're in June, so we have 9.5 months to go. 9 years and 6 months to go. So what are the key steps, in your opinion, that African parliaments need to take to achieve the SDGs? And in so doing, do you see any niche or specific role for APNODE in this regard? Honorable Kakubo.
I think one of the key interventions that we as parliamentarians have to put in is going to be specific from one country to the next. In the case of Zambia, one of the key things that we must look at is to streamline the budgeting process, to only include, to as much as possible, have a bias to activities that steer the achievement of SDGs. You find that some of the expenditures you find in the budget process may not be key for the times that we need in. So we need to evolve and reflect the challenges and the times in which we are now. Otherwise, we stand a risk of missing out on achieving the SDGs. You see, the time frame that you've aligned is quite tight. There's need for a country like ours to restructure its budget, restructure its expenditure. We already see that from the time that we open next week, we expect that the Minister of Finance will bring in a revised budget to reflect the different fundamentals of the economy that have changed, so that we don't move away from the SDG targets that have been set by the partnerships between us and the UN.
Thank you very much. So ladies and gentlemen, at this point in time, I think we'll open it up. Already questions have started coming in, but I see more people have questions. So like I said, we're going to take 3 questions. We allow Honorable Kakubo and Honorable Evelyn to respond. We'll go back and take another 3. And Hermine will take us from here. Hermine, thank you. Your mic.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Honorable Kakubo, and also Honorable Evelyn for typing in your responses. And to some of the questions and comments that have come through, I see we have one that I think hasn't yet been answered. So I'm going to take that one, and then I will encourage others to either type your question in or raise your hand, and we can take a verbal question from you. So the question we have is, I have from Asimwe. I have seen the M&E system of Zambia, and it's very comprehensive. How is this helping you? What's your input into this system as members of parliament, or what is the oversight role there? Honorable Kakubo, I think it's addressed to you directly. Okay,
I think the oversight role of us parliamentarians in Zambia is a key function of what is expected of us. We provide complete oversight on the functions of the executive, and we can do more. And for us, I think at the moment we'll be relying mostly on the activities of APNODE to strengthen our skills, because we have gaps in our skills knowledge. We must admit that. And once we fill up that gap in the knowledge, then we can provide more oversight function that is expected of us. We're already doing that, and when you look at the structure of our parliament, it is such that when the House is sitting, oversight is done through the portfolio committees. It is done in the House, in the main chamber itself, as well as in the different portfolio committees. But there are times when Parliament is not sitting. Again, our oversight role continues by the system that we have here that enables us to go in groups as members of Parliament in monitoring government projects, checking the progress, how government money is being spent. And it's a continuous process throughout the tenure of an MP.
Thank you so much. And then I think Honorable Evelyn is also responding, not specifically to the point, the question around M&E in Zambia, but more broadly. And her response is that APNODE is planning on visiting various parliaments to take them through the use of evaluation in their work. And they can do, so that they can also set up chapters on evaluation, especially to contribute to tracking the SDGs. Thank you. So we don't have any more questions in our chat box or in the Q&A box. So I'm going to ask to check if there's anyone that would like to raise their hand and put a question to our speakers. I don't see any hands raised, but I see a question coming in. And the question is from Awar Ponge. I hope I've pronounced correctly. In what ways have the different countries aligned their national development blueprints with the global SDGs? And what is the role of Parliament been on this, especially with regard to evaluating the same? So basically the alignment between the NDPs and the global SDGs. Honorable Kakubo, can you respond to the question?
Yes, I think the question is very similar to ones that have already been asked, but for the purpose of emphasis, I'm happy to respond to that. The Zambian setup here is strongly aligned to the SDGs. We actually have a specific ministry that ensures that all our planning is in accordance with the 7th National Development Plan. We have the Ministry of National Development and Planning that makes sure that the whole government system is aligned to the SDGs, and we cannot divert. It's a full-blown, it's a fully established ministry with the minister and all the staff complement that are aligned to it. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And then I see we have a raised hand from Asimwe Turiyamajuka. I'll give over the floor to you, Asimwe. Okay, I think we may have lost Asimwe. Perhaps you can type in your response or your question, and I can read it to everyone.
Hello, now I'm on, I hope.
Good, yes, we can hear you. Please go, proceed.
Yeah, my question is really an additional question. I would like to hear from Honorable Evelyn, you know, she's always, parliamentarians are in parliament and we the citizens may not hear from them a lot. But I would like her to talk more about barazas. Yes, they have been working and they are good practice. However, they may not reach everywhere very quickly. I would like to hear from her how they can make this good practice spread to the whole country. Is it quite an effective tool for especially Agenda 2030?
Thank you very much, Asimwe. I'm hoping that Honorable Evelyn was able to hear that and she will type a response for us. In the meantime, she has responded to one of the other questions and is saying that Uganda is using a program-based budget system where all SDGs are considered, and we are now at NDP 3, which is synced to the various SDGs, and this was adopted by Parliament. So I'm hoping that she will also respond to your previous question. In the meantime, I'm going to read a response from Dr. Vincent Kanyamuna, that he agrees with Honorable Kakubo that Zambia has more room for improvement in terms of the M&E function. Example, Zambia has the first ever national M&E policy launched in 2019. This gives all stakeholders, including Parliament, to establish and finance M&E activities. It will be good to have a law to support M&E at the national level. And I think this is a discussion in a number of parliaments in terms of institutionalizing M&E and asking parliaments to advocate for that to happen. So thanks for that, Dr. Vincent. And so the question posed to Uganda, Honorable Evelyn, I hope you can hear this and then type in the response, is to hear more about the barazas in Uganda. They may not be reaching everywhere. And is it possible to spread them to more places, especially in relation to Agenda 2030? And this is from Asimwe again. Thank you for the question. I'm sure that Honorable Evelyn will try and respond if she's able to do so. I don't see any other questions. I'd like to check if there are any raised hands, any other raised hands. And I don't see any more raised hands. Yes, and then we have another response from Jarao Siami. And the response is, like Honorable Kakubo put it, for African parliaments to achieve anything on the SDGs, there is a need to strengthen M&E systems that are oriented or aligned to the parliamentary function of oversight, specifically on SDGs. And the question posed is, does or can APNODE render finance and technical support to parliaments in this regard? Kobena, while we wait for Honorable Evelyn, perhaps you should take that one. And then Honorable Kakubo in the national chapter capacity. Kobena, your mic.
Sorry. Okay, so maybe Honorable Kakubo can go ahead first and then I'll chip in.
Yes, I think the observation by in the question is very, very relevant. We won't go far without support. And we are hoping that, like Honorable mentioned, as APNODE, we'll be able to visit several countries to bring awareness to the issues of M&E and also to bring in technical support, and where possible, where funds are available as much as possible, we'll be able to support different parliaments. That's the whole idea of the exchange under APNODE, is for us to reach all parliaments across Africa, for us to provide the support specific to each need of a parliament. So that is why I think even the Honorable emphasized that APNODE will be going around the continent to identify areas of need and to provide solutions and to make partnerships with all parliaments across Africa.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think
would you like to go?
Sure. I think from the Secretariat, when in terms of providing finance to parliaments, the network is not financially at the point where that can happen. But the network has, since inception in 2014, been providing technical support to parliaments. Over the 5 years of its existence, APNODE has trained, working in partnership with its key partners, be Claire AA, UN Women, UNICEF, UNDP. It's trained over 500 parliamentarians and parliamentary staffers. It also helped facilitate their participation in local, regional, and global forums where they've had the opportunity to not only exchange on experiences, but also learn from others, which then has subsequently been brought back to their respective parliaments and built into their daily work in Parliament. So yes, in that regard, APNODE does provide technical support, and that is one of APNODE's basically strengths, that once you're a member, either as an individual or an institutional member, you get this support. Also, APNODE tries to, through its weekly What's New flyer, to disseminate knowledge, cutting edge knowledge, be it new publications, be it facilitate members' participation in blogs, in trainings, in webinars, such that members can then build their skills and capacities, which then they use within their national parliaments. Thank you.
Thanks, Kobena. Thanks for that emphasis on APNODE's role in disseminating and sharing information and building knowledge, but also technical support rather than the emphasis on the finance. Thanks for clarifying that. And then I'd just like us to take a step back. Honorable Evelyn has responded to Asimwe's question around the barazas. So I'm just going to read the response. Honorable Evelyn says that barazas is a tool which is used by the MNE unit in the Office of the Prime Minister in selected districts, and that citizens then gather and ask questions from various panelists about government programs in these baraza sessions. But she says that barazas have not covered the whole country due to resource constraints, but has covered about 50%. And then we'll move on to the last question. Thank you, Honorable Evelyn, for responding. The last question by Abu Orponge is that we have moved the goalpost from the MDGs to the SDGs. What measures have the national governments put in place to ensure we don't push the goalpost again come 2030? Are we even on target with our annual targets on the path to realizing the SDGs? And Honorable Kakubo, I'm going to ask you to respond to that. And Honorable Evelyn, if you can type in, please do so. Thank you.
I think it's a tough question. It's a very tough question. I expect that maybe the goalposts will be moved again. For instance, we don't know, nobody seems to know when the coronavirus is going to leave in order for the world to function normally. And that's going to affect how, it's already affecting how business will be done for whatever period. So I think we will need to, as different countries, it's almost inevitable that there's going to be needs to realign ourselves. Because I think once, if God help us, the COVID-19 disappears, I think the focus of many nations will be first to come up with recovery plans before we can realign ourselves to achieving the SDGs. We have to recover jobs, we have to recover household incomes. There will be need for governments to, for different governments to go back their levels of collecting taxes and revenues in order for us to replan the whole process again. So my expectation is that there may be a serious need to it's almost inevitable that goalposts may be changed. Because when you check, I think the data, you find that some nations, even before COVID, were already behind schedule in achieving progress on the SDGs. So the climate in which we are living now makes it even more difficult. So it's almost inevitable that there may be need to move the goalposts. Unfortunately, I must emphasize.
Thank you so much for that response. And I think it's an important one that we be realistic and that we know that governments are going to have to focus on the recovery plans and that the goalpost may shift again. So thank you for that point of realism as well. And then we have a question from Dr. Vincent Kanyamu, or at least a comment. It is a common trend across African governments to have tight budgets, ending up cutting expenditure every year. MNE-related activities suffer first. And so how can parliaments ensure budgets for MNE are secured no matter what, because evidence is crucial for onward demonstration of results, especially SDG tracking. And then I'm going to read, no, I think that's fine. I'm going to ask Honorable Kakubo to respond to that point, and then also perhaps to give the closing remark to your input. Thank you so much.
Okay, I think I tend to agree with Dr. Vincent and Yamuna. It definitely, I think it's a trend across most most nations, where you find that when expenditure is being cut, is to activities to do with SDGs. Again, I think the solution to that depends on how the country's constitution is set up. Some constitutions allow the executive to play a leading role in how expenditure is expensed, what is cut, and in terms, when you look at, say, for instance, Zambia, Parliament is involved in the formulation of the budget, but it's usually the function of the executive to see where they can cut expenditure, and Parliament may have very little to say in that regard. I think it all depends on the country structure, but specific to us as Zambian parliamentarians, one of the key things that we hope to do is to put in interventions that when cuts are happening, they should be as little as possible affecting the SDGs. Other than that, usually when you look at the structure of our constitution, the executive really runs the country and not Parliament.
Thank you very much for that response, Honorable Kakubo. We also have a response from Honorable Evelyn. She is saying that she thinks that countries should start off by carrying out a midterm review of how far we have gone in the implementation of the SDGs, especially as a post-COVID-19 program. And then in terms of Honorable Evelyn's closing statement, she has asked me to check whether she can respond verbally. So we're going to try that. Honorable Evelyn? I think we still have a problem, Honorable Evelyn. We will ask you to please type in your closing statement. And in the meantime, I'm going to give over to Kobena for the closing remark from his side. Thank you.
Thank you, Hermine. Thank you really for the questions. Ladies and gentlemen, even as we wait for Honorable Evelyn to key in her remarks, I would like to thank Honorable Stanley Kakubo for making the time to join us, for providing the insightful comments. Not only have you opened our eyes to what is happening in Parliament in Zambia, but also to your vision and what basically APNODE Zambia will be doing, and also what other parliaments and parliamentarians are doing. And Honorable Evelyn, same to you. We apologize for the technical difficulties that you have, but we do appreciate you sticking with us and also keying in your questions from Uganda. To the participants that joined us this morning, if you're again within this region, and for those of you, let's say in the afternoons and evenings, wherever you are, we're really grateful that, with all the different panels going on, you decided to join this one. We hope that you found it as insightful as we have. And like I did point out at the beginning, that once we're done, we will make sure that the recording is online, such that you can share this with colleagues who were unable to join us. To my co-moderator, Hermine, thank you very much. That was wonderful. I appreciate it. It's always wonderful working with Claire AA. And to everyone behind the scenes who helped make this possible, from the team in IT to colleagues in IDEV who supported with the comms, the APNODE team, everybody in IDEV 3, my sincere appreciation. This would not have been possible without all of you. So even as we go forward, we said we're going to end at 12. It's now 11:59, so we've also tried to stay on time. I am now going to read Honorable Evelyn's comment that she's typed in, and then we'll sort of like bring this to a close. So from Honorable Evelyn, she says that she would like to call upon all parliaments to provide purposeful oversight and monitoring of government programs in implementing the SDGs. Thank you, Honorable Evelyn, and thank you again, Honorable Kakubo. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Hope that you join us again when APNODE Claire AA has another webinar. Hope you guys all have a wonderful Friday and a wonderful weekend.
And thanks to you, Kobena.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. I'm a finance person. It was very hard for me.
Bye.
Bye. Very difficult.
Thanks so much, Chairperson and Sarafina and Honorable Kakubo and Honorable Evelyn and of course Kobena. Thank you.